Hi there, I'm Clifford Bates, and welcome once again to reading Machiavelli's Discourses. Today we're continuing our examination of Book 2 of the Discourses, looking today at Chapter 3. Chapter 3's title is Rome Became a Great City Through Ruining the Surrounding Cities and Easily Admitting Foreigners to Its Honors. In other words, the way the Romans able to grow, that Rome became a great city by its conquering of its neighbors, but then also admitting foreigners and citizens, okay. Meanwhile, Rome grew from the ruins of Alba, right? This is the quote, and this is quoted in Latin from Livy 130 with some alterations, right? Those who plan for a city to make a great empire should contrive to make, with all industry, to make it full of inhabitants. For without this abundance of men, one will never succeed in making a city great. In other words, you need to have a lot of people. This is done in two modes, by love and by force. So if you're going to have a city great, you need to have it full of men, and it can be done by two ways, by love or by force. By love, through keeping the ways open and secure for foreigners who plan to come to inhabit it, so that everyone may inhabit it willingly. So welcoming people to come into it, and they enter into it, and they can do so willingly. So they allow foreigners who plan to come to inhabit it to come willingly. And by force, through undoing the neighboring cities and sending their inhabitants to inhabit your city. In other words, just knocking out the other cities and, getting them to flee to your city to work and be served, the people there. This was observed by Rome so much that in the time of the sixth king, Servilis Tullus, Livy 144, 80,000 men, 80,000 men able to bear arms inhabited Rome. So therefore, by the sixth king, they had such a huge. For Rome wished to act according to the usages of the good. Rome wished to act accordingly to the usages of the good cultivator, who, for a plant to thicken and able to produce and mature its fruit, cuts off the first branches, puts it forth, so that they can with time arise there greener and more fruitful. Since virtue remains in the stem of the plant. In other words, this is the cultivator. This is someone who cultivates the line. In other words, they cut the first fruits off. Why? Because, it allows the rest, the thing that has strength and virtue. In other words, that the fruit, and branch, so that it, in time arises there greener and more fruitful, because the stem of the plant is still good in that sense. The example of Sparta and Athens demonstrates this, that this mode taken to expand and make an empire was necessity and good. In other words, the example of Sparta and Athens demonstrate that this mode taken to expand, because the Athenians and Spartans, their example kind of negative in that sense. Though they were two republics. They were two republics, very armed and ordered with very good laws. Nevertheless, they were not led to the greatness of Rome, of the Roman Empire. And Rome seemed more tumultuous and not so well ordered as they. In other words, these cities were kind of better ordered, but they never achieved the size. Their empires never achieved the greatness in other words, the Athenians and the Spartans never achieved an empire as much as Rome did, and they were better ordered. No other cause of this can be brought up than that cited before, that through having thickened the body of its city by those two ways, love and force, Rome could already put to arms 280,000 men. In Sparta and Athens never passed beyond 20,000 each. So the example is that the Spartan that Rome was able to achieve. Sparta and Athens only achieved like limited ability to raise population, where Rome, because of how it did it, it grew. Its population was huge that it could man huge armies. Thus arose not from Rome's sight being more benign than theirs, but from its different mode of proceeding. In other words, it's not because Rome was a better location than theirs. In other words, it wasn't because of the land and the quality of the land that allowed it. It was the mode of proceeding, the mode of proceeding citizenship, right? That they made. In other words, this arose not from Rome's sight, but more from their being more benign than theirs, but from a different mode of proceeding. Since Lycurgus, founder of the Spartan Republic, considered that nothing could dissolve his laws more easily than the mixture of new inhabitants, he did everything so that foreigners should not have to deal there. Converse there. In other words, they were against foreigners, right? Beside not admitting them into marriages, into citizenship, and into other dealings, conversations, or even not even other conversations that make men come together. He ordered that leather money should be spent in his republic to take away from everyone the desire to come there, to bring merchandise there, or to bring some art there, so the city would never thicken with inhabitants. Again, Seneca de Benefits, Xenophon's The Last Macedonian Constitution, Book 7, Seneca's De Benefits, again, Book 5, 14, Xenophon's Constitution 7, 5 through 6, Plutarch's Lycurgus 9 and 27, and Polybius, Book 6, Chapter 49. So Rome was not. Rome, in other words, the Spartans didn't want new foreigners to come to make there. They wanted to purify itself. Since all our actions imitate nature, it is neither possible nor natural for a thin trunk to support a thick branch. In other words, because he wanted to keep the branch to be, in other words, the trunk to be small, not big trunk, not encouraging people there. You can't have a big branch with supporting a small trunk. Natural nature. So a small republic cannot seize cities or kingdoms that are sounder or thicker than it. If, however, it seizes one, what happens is as with a tree that has a thicker branch than the stems. It supports it with labor, and a very small wind breaks it. In other words, he uses the metaphor of the nature. Machiavelli uses the metaphor of nature, natural world, as his metaphor to understand that why did the Spartans and Athenians fail? Well, the Spartans failed because they didn't allow citizens to become. Now, he doesn't explain Athens' failure. He only explains Sparta. In other words, Sparta wanted purification, didn't allow people to become citizens. Rome took in, it destroyed the neighboring cities so that it took in people that have a strong had people. So they live out of love and force. Remember the two modes by which they encourage people to become citizens. Sparta did neither policy, right? They sought the opposite. Thus, as was seen to happen to Sparta, which had seized all the cities of Greece, no sooner did Thebes rebel than all the other cities rebelled, and the trunk alone remained without branches, right? This is from Plutarch's Philodinus, right? Polybius, book 6, 50. This could not happen to Rome, since its stem was so thick that it could easily support any branch whatever. In other words, because how it grew, the population grew so big, thus this mode of proceeding, together with the others, that which have been said below, that will be said below, made Rome great and very powerful. Titus Livy demonstrates this in 2 words when he says, meanwhile Rome grew from the ruins of Albia, right? So he uses that to open his thing, and he uses it to close his thing. The quote of 5 words from Livy, 130, with the same alteration as the opening of the chapter, same alteration as with the at the beginning of the chapter. So he begins and ends with this view of this. Okay, so we're stopping here. If you have any questions or comment, please give them below, and we will address them to you and give answers or respond. If you have any other issues, please raise them there. Another thing is, if you like it, hit the like button. Hit the like button, please. Like and if you've not subscribed, like and share. So okay, share. Brain dead. Share. If you like the video, share it. Share it with your friends. Share it with someone who they think would be interested in it. Share it far and wide. Share it on your social media. Okay, and again, share it around. Another thing you can do is, if you've not subscribed, consider subscribing. Do subscribe. Encourage your other friends to come check the channel out, and encourage them to go maybe even subscribe. Again, by doing this helps the algorithm. By commenting, liking, sharing, subscribing, all improves the algorithm, so that when people searching for topics like Machiavelli or Discourses or Prince or something like this, these videos will come to their attention. Now, of course, if you didn't like it, you disagree with something I said here, or think I read something wrong, you can always thumbs down it, but say why in the comments. This way people can benefit, and what was wrong, or what can be done better. Again, thank you. Another thing you can do is, if you want to follow me on social media, the social media links are below. If you want to know more about me as an academic and as a scholar, you can check out my academic social media links, which will highlight not only in my scholarship, links to the scholarship and things like that. So that's below the social media links. And if you want to help me, you want to contribute to help me to do something, to continue doing these things, it does help. Please do subscribe, or think about subscribing, or through Subscribestar or Patreon, or any other means possible. You can also do so by buying one of the books that list my current available books listed below. You can order it either if you can find a copy at local bookstore, then fine. Maybe you have to order it, but you can use an online distributor like Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Libris, Book Depository, etc. Or you could go to the publishers themselves. With that, we now turn to chapter 4, right? Chapter 4 next. With that, take care and have a great day. Bye-bye. Take care. See you.